Okay, I'm going to be doing my evaluation of the direct provision system in Ireland. So, firstly, what is the direct provision system? Basically, this is Ireland's way of handling immigrants coming into the country seeking asylum or a place to stay until they get a visa to stay here. So, oftentimes, people entering this system are immigrants coming from countries where there's civil unrest or they had to leave for political reasons regarding their safety and just weren't able to live there and are looking for somewhere safe to live. While they're waiting for their visa to be assessed, that is where they stay in this system. In this system, they're given shelter, 3 meals a day, and a weekly allowance of around €40 for adults and €30 for children. So, what are some strengths of the system? It provides an immediate accommodation, so gives them housing right off the bat, which is good, keeping them off the streets. Provides basic human necessities. As I mentioned earlier, it gives them the 3 meals a day, and it does give them that money to go and buy more necessities. It provides a structured system for the government to review asylum seekers' applications, just so they kind of have all the tabs on them, know where everyone is, and kind of discourages individuals from coming into the country illegally, which brings me to my next point. Provides a legal way for migrants to enter Ireland and request leave to stay. Some weaknesses of the system. First of all, poor living conditions. Oftentimes, the housing that individuals are given is not very adequate. A lot of times here in Ireland, this is converted hotels that were converted into places for asylum seekers, and oftentimes people are really crammed, and there will be a lot of people in small combined spaces. And also, sometimes the housing isn't even as adequate as that. For example, sometimes they'll take festival grounds after big festivals and use the tents provided on those grounds as places to stay, which are obviously not very ideal. These poor living conditions can often cause mental health issues, and it doesn't allow individuals to fully be able to integrate into society very well because they're kind of confined to these spaces with all of these other asylum seekers from different places. Long waiting periods for applications. So I'll get into this on the next slide because this has recently been changed, but in the past, the average for an application to get approved or denied is about 2 years. So for some people, this could mean it gets approved or denied in a matter of months. And for some people, they're stuck in this system for 10 years or something really long like that, which is a very extreme amount of time to be stuck in this program. Food restrictions. So if individuals have dietary restrictions or can't eat certain things for religious reasons, they don't really have a lot of choices. They're kind of given what they're given in terms of their 3 meals. And if they can't eat those things, they don't have a lot of other options. And also, this food is often not very nutritious, which is especially a problem for children. Individuals are not allowed to get jobs for the first 6 months they're in the program. They're given that weekly allowance, however, that is not that much for an individual person, and they aren't allowed to get, or they aren't able to get a lot of their basic necessities because they don't have the money, and for those first 6 months they aren't allowed to get jobs, which also prevents them from getting a good start in this new nation and giving them more opportunities, and overall makes them feel as though they have no sense of purpose. If they don't have a job, they're kind of just stuck sitting around all day in these bad accommodations, don't really have anything to do, which can really be bad for an individual's mental health. The system is overcrowded. So like I mentioned, a lot of individuals stuck into a small space. And also, these individuals are from all around the world, and some groups may not get along, and they're stuck together in these systems. and that can cause a lot of conflict. And on the more local side, many Irish people are upset that their tax money goes into paying for the direct provision system and paying for these accommodations and paying for their food. So that is definitely a big complaint and a reason why a lot of anti-immigrant commotion is going on right now. Okay, so some opportunities for the system. The International Protection Bill was recently implemented in Ireland in 2026, and there are four main guarantees, or not guarantees, but provisions in this bill. The first is that individuals coming into the system have to go through biometric screening. So when an individual comes through the airport or the seaport, they have to go through the screening. It requires fingerprints, identification such as passports, and this kind of just sees an individual's background, makes sure they don't have a criminal history, also ensures that an individual's in the system. In this bill, it is also noted that applications must be reviewed within 6 months. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest problems with the direct provision system is that these applications took so long to be reviewed. So this is definitely a big step. However, there's no guarantees really on how this is going to be implemented, just like all of these other bills or rules in the bill. Next, individuals are granted the right to appeal if their application is denied. In the past, you could only really do this through getting a lawyer, and a lot of individuals, especially those who are seeking asylum, typically do not have the funds to get that, so made this system very biased towards people who have more wealth, and also just in general a way bigger hassle than it needs to be. Not saying that this completely fixes everything, but they are given a right to appeal if their application is denied. And then the last one is that family reunification is not granted until an individual has been in the direct provision system for at least 2 years. So in the past, families and family members were basically allowed to come join individuals in Ireland. And this did cause a lot of problems because it increased overcrowding. And now they have to wait at least 2 years. So it's not a bunch of just random family members coming in and joining. But on the flip side of that, it can be a problem because it can split up families and, again, kind of back to the mental health aspect, make life really hard for those seeking asylum. Potential opportunities, here's some ideas that I just thought of that could improve the system. So provide access to community. As I mentioned earlier, these people in the direct provision system are often not really integrated into Irish society. So just giving them more opportunities to gain a sense of community both within and outside of the direct provision program. Provide education programs. This is especially beneficial to individuals who don't speak English or children and families, because currently there are education programs, but they're most likely all scams. So to get some actual educational programs. And then allow individuals to work immediately. I already talked about the repercussions of the 6-month policy, but this would just allow individuals to find an immediate source of income and an immediate sense of purpose. Okay, some threats to the system. As I kind of went over earlier, the International Protection Bill was just implemented in 2026, and there aren't a lot of specificities regarding how these guidelines are going to be enforced. So while these provisions are very beneficial, they're only beneficial if they're actually enforced and if they're able to work. And we don't know how that is going to go over yet. Another thing is the EU migration policy can change. So while this direct provision system is Ireland's specific way of dealing with migrants, they still are abiding to the EU migration policy, which is not always changing, but can change. And if it does, this affects the system and how it works. And again, I kind of brushed over this, but many Irish citizens are not happy with the amount of migrants receiving asylum, just because a lot of them and their tax money is paying for this system. And there's also the common notion that immigrants are stealing jobs, which is not often the case because these immigrants are often taking the jobs that citizens don't want to do, such as taxi drivers or fast food restaurants. But that is a very common misperception surrounding immigrants coming in. And just because of this, they might seek for legislation that discourages the direct provision system and overall discourages immigrants coming in. So that's my last slide, but in all, the direct provision system definitely has a lot of beneficial qualities, but at the same time could be improved. The immigrant situation, not even in Ireland, but worldwide, is very tricky to deal with because there often is no good way to go about it. It's really hard to find a good system that works. So in my opinion, this system is better than a lot of other countries' systems and does give migrants an opportunity to come here and start a life. However, some aspects of it are inhumane and do not give migrants a very good experience. So I'm interested to see how the new international protection bill kind of plays out, because I think one of the main things is the 6-month waiting period. I think that if that can really be enforced and if they can figure that out, then these migrants won't be as crowded and the system will flow a lot better. But on the flip side of that, if they're just trying to push out these applications and go through them very fast, they can make a lot of mistakes in reviewing and accepting or denying individuals. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from looking at it, and this bill will be very influential, but we need to see how it goes. But in all, that's the direct provision system in Ireland. Thank you.